Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming and listen. My apologies that I'm not in Stockholm with you. I hope you are having a great summit. I would like to have been there, but unfortunately, I need to be in the Netherlands today. But feel free to contact me through Twitter, LinkedIn, or by email if you want to have further discussions on these issues. And today, in this moment, I would like to discuss a little bit with you about responsible artificial intelligence, about AI ethics, and how can we move from principles and from nice words to really making sure that all our AI systems, all our data driven initiatives are done in a responsible way and are used in a responsible way. This all starts, of course, with the question, what exactly is AI? What is, sorry, my screen is not, yeah. What is AI? So why are we nowadays, and I've been working in AI for the last 30 years, yes, there was AI 30 years ago. I have been working for many years, and why are we at this moment, at this time, really concerned about responsibility, about ethics, about trustworthy and ethical use of this type of system? So what are we talking about when we talk about the AI systems, about intelligence systems, about data-driven systems? Of course, we all know, and I'm talking to experts today, so we all know that AI is much more than just algorithms. AI is just not just the data, and definitely, and despite what all many speakers, many media and journalists want us to make believe, AI is definitely not magic. It is about technologies that are able to use data, to use information, to use knowledge in ways that, in some more or less autonomous way, in ways that are able to adapt and to learn from past experience, and of course, interacting and doing the using of these technologies to in interaction with people, in interaction with the environment. There is also a large discussion currently about whether these systems are intelligent, whether these systems are artificial. And I advise you to read, for instance, the book, The Atlas of AI by Kate Crawford, in which she really explains in a very, very good way her opinion about whether AI is or not intelligent, whether AI is or not artificial. AI is definitely not intelligent, and all of us that have used AI know and are aware of the limitations of what an AI system can do. AI systems are not intelligent like we would consider a person, a child, even an animal to be intelligent. They are useful and very, very efficient in some ways. What is important to realize when we talk about responsibility, when we talk about ethics, is that AI systems are construct. In a sense, they are definitely artificial, they are built, they are artifacts, they are tools, but at the same time, they are extremely dependent on natural resources, both the people that develop, design, collect the data, tag the data, use the system. So it's impossible to separate the AI system from the persons around it, but also we cannot separate AI systems from the natural resources, the energy, the rare materials, all the components which we need to build digital systems and therefore AI systems. However, AI applications don't exist in a vacuum, don't exist in the lab alone. AI applications are not alone. They are intrinsically in part of a social technical ecosystem, I would like to call it, in which the components, the digital components, interact and act together with the people, with organizations which develop, design, govern, take decisions about policies, use them in one way or another. So we really cannot, when we talk about responsibility, when we talk about ethics, we can definitely not separate the digital components from this social ecosystem in which these components are being developed and being used. It's also important to realize that when we talk about the impact of AI, the positive and the negative impact of AI, and we all know that both are possible, that there is not a technological fix for all the ill effects, for all the problems of AI systems. So we really need to address the concerns, the impact, like I say, the positive and the negative impact of AI systems from a social technical perspective. We cannot solve it all by making better digital components to make sure that the digital components are ethical in some way. We do really to address the people, the organizations, the societies around the systems. Uh, we all know, so a lot of what AI is doing nowadays is learning, is acting based on data that has been collected by people, data that are a representation of reality, but definitely not the reality in itself, data that might have not been collected for the explicit purpose of the application where it is being used, and data that might or not address the exact population, the exact group of people, the exact group of the context in which it is being used. So we all know, and definitely today, talking to all of you, we all know how these systems work. We do know that it's not magic, but there are quite a lot of problems derived from the aspects of learning from data. The issues of bias and discrimination, we cannot not stress enough the problems of trying to use a system that has been developed, trained, tested, and evaluated in a certain context to other contexts. Also, being sure that the data that is being used to train, to develop, to test the system is data that really reflects the population exactly as those that are going to use the system. So those are real issues that many of you, I'm sure, are working at this moment. We also all know that AI systems are extremely brittle. They are easy to trick either by error or by attack. A small change, a small variation in the data can really get the system going completely in the craziest direction. So we really need to be aware of that. We are also aware of the issues that are derived from the development processes being used. And of course, the cartoon is just a cartoon, but we really need to be aware of how are we developing these systems and how much systematization, how much really scientific and technological engineering processes are or not being used and being applied in terms of the development of these systems. And I'm sure that many of you are aware of the current efforts of the European Union in terms of the developing regulation for AI, the so-called AI Act. If you read the AI Act, one of the large recommendations that they make is basically, and that's how I translate it, use proper software development processes. And if we do that, then we are addressing already a large part of what are the requirements from the AI Act. So use proper software engineering process. And of course, there is the issue of learning from the crowd and how intelligent or not the crowd is, the crowd behind all the data that is being used. So we can do a lot with learning from data. We are solving problems as we speak that we never thought could be solved in this way before. But we do need to be aware of the problems that come with the using and the dependence on data for the work that we are doing. So we are responsible. We people, we are responsible. All the problems that are derived and all the concerns that we have with the using of AI, using of data systems are problems that we people, we organizations are responsible. It's not a responsibility of the computer or the system, the AI applications. These concerns are, in my opinion, can be composed or classified in three main issues. And these are issues of datification, issues of power, and issues of sustainability. We really need to be aware that we people, we societies, we world are much more than the data that is possible to collect. Data is always collected for a specific purpose. Data is also always about the past. And I see an increasingly dependence on data, and also seeing the availability of data as a metric for success. We are developing systems for those situations in which we think that we can easily or more easily collect data, that we can identify what kind of data is needed. But not all problems in the world are solved by data collection, are solved by data analytics. So we really need to be aware that we do need to diversify also in terms of approaches to the ways that we are dealing with problem solving, with addressing societal and humanitarian situations. And this is very much connected to the issue of power. Those who have the power to decide whether or not to develop AI systems are those that have the power to determine what type of AI are we using, what are we using AI for, what are the benefits, and for who are the benefits of using AI. So the issue of power is an issue which has been addressed by many researchers recently, but it's really something which we do need to make a much more conscious effort to understand and to guide. Those that are deciding about AI are deciding for all of us, and their motivations are not always the motivations of all of us in a democratic and open society. And another issue which is also increasingly coming up in many discussions is the issue of the cost of AI, the issue of sustainability. How are we going to justify or to address the issue of increasing accuracy for instance, 1% for a system, knowing that 1% accuracy will possibly cost 50 or 40% more computational power. So we do need to start taking sustainability, taking the societal and environmental costs and impact of AI as part of the decisions, as part of the metrics that we take for deriving the success of AI. So responsible AI is basically understanding that all of this is an issue, is understanding that AI systems can potentially do a lot. The question zero is the question which we should all start from. Should we be using AI for this specific situation? And who are we? Who are the ones who are going to decide? Which values are going to be considered? How are we going to prioritize these values? How are we going to ensure that as AI is being developed, as being used, as being addressing many questions in the world, how are we going to include all the voices, all the values, and all the people which are affected by it? This has been addressed by many organizations, and there are at this moment a lot of principles and guidelines and recommendations from almost every organization in the world, from the large United Nations agencies to the European Union to the World Economic Forum, you name it, and they have developed principles and guidelines for AI. Uh, Fortunately, or it's good because it shows awareness of it. Also, if we really go into the text of these recommendations, they all are basically asking for the same thing, are asking for responsibility, are asking for transparency, are asking for concern for democratic values and human rights. So the points are all quite aligned, of course, with some substantial difference. They are aligned because they are described at a very high level of abstraction. The difficulty is, of course, for all of us that are developing and using AI systems, how do we translate these nice words into concrete applications in our systems? And again, I'm talking about the social technical systems. How do we translate this both in organizational and human processes and recommendations? And also, how do we translate this into requirements for the software and the digital systems that we are developing? So operationalization is coming in many flavors and and directions. The regulation, of course, are also a lot of work being done in terms of standards, in terms of large organizations coming up with their own internal processes. AI ethics officers or AI and ethic panels are increasingly part of the work being done in industry. There is a lot of work developing and designing support tools for the assessment and monitoring and auditing of AI systems. And of course, a lot of the needs and is being done in terms of awareness and participation, really addressing the issues of education and training. So responsible AI is about making sure that as we're developing these AI systems, as we are using and integrating AI applications in our daily lives, we need to take care of the issues of accountability, of responsibility, and of transparency. Art in a short word. So responsible AI is about art and art in this context. Responsible AI is also about understanding that AI, the discipline of AI, is not an engineering discipline, is not just about computer science and data science, is really a multidisciplinary field, is a field in which we really need to integrate engineering and natural science with the humanities and the social science to address and to understand and to develop and analyze issues of governance, issues of the legal, societal, and economic impact of the systems, issues of value-based design, issues of inclusion and diversity, and so on. So we really need to take a broad and inclusive and diverse approach, not only to the effects of AI systems, but also to the way that we are developing AI systems and the composition of those teams that are involved in the development and the design of the systems. Finally, it's important to realize that responsibility and ethics are not a block in the way to innovation. Responsibility and ethics are a stepping stone for innovation. Innovation is about fundamentally moving technology forward, is not about using the current technology as it is about recognizing that current technology can provide us many, many, many benefits, but the innovation is exactly ensuring that those benefits are accompanied by the addressing of all the potential concerns that I have been talking about. So innovation is about bringing AI that we have now a step forward in which we guarantee that it's not just effective, but it's also responsible and takes into account ethics. All of this, the regulations, the concerns for responsibility and ethics ultimately will ensure public acceptance, will ensure trust in the systems, are a drive for transformation of and business differentiations. So we really need to see responsibility and ethics as the beacon, indicating the direction in which we want AI systems to be developed. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to speak to you, and it's a pity that I could not be there. Let me see if there are any questions. I believe that we have 1 or 2 minutes for questions.